Welcome to another exciting episode. This time, we are going to be taking a look at some of the more obscure arcade scrolling beat-em-ups. As one of my favourite genres, I have invested a lot of time playing these games, from the absolute classics made by the likes of Konami and Capcom, to the more obscure, weird, and sometimes terrible games from less known developers. In this first episode of the series, I'll be selecting some of the games I feel fell under the radar. Maybe not so much now, but certainly when they were originally released. So let's begin with some blazing martial arts action as we take a trip back to the early 90s. The first game we're going to take a look at is from 1991. It's Karate Blazers. This one was developed by Video System, who are probably best known for their Aero Fighters, Sonic Wings and Power Spikes games. Let's begin with the game's story. A martial arts master is killed, his daughter has been kidnapped, and a set of scrolls have been stolen, so it's up to you to rescue her and retrieve the scrolls. There are 4 characters to choose from, and they are perfectly described in the intro. Mark, the nomadic mercenary, this is the finishing blow. Glenn, the invincible wrestler with thunderous fists. Gil, the mysterious fighter, what's justice to him? And Akira, the passionate ninja with a blundering personality. There you go. Perfect description. As far as the combat goes, it is severely lacking in that all-important punch. The attacks just don't feel like they have a great deal of impact, and the hit detection isn't great. The visuals aren't anything special, but they do the job. The character sprites are small, but there are times when it feels like the entire screen is full of enemies, so it rarely feels empty. The settings are fairly standard for a beat-em-up from this time, with streets, industrial areas and factories providing the battleground. As the game progresses, the enemies begin turning into robots which explode. This causes absolute chaos as you now have to deal with explosions and enemies. The music is good in places, with upbeat tracks that suit the mood of the game and the locations. Overall, Karate Blazers lacks that all-important polish that would have made it a really quality game. There are plenty of elements that make it enjoyable, and it does have character, but it isn't likely to live long in the memory after playing it. My first run-in with Jaleco's scrolling beat-em-ups was Rival Turf, which was the first in a trilogy of brawlers for the Super Nintendo. Rival Turf was seen as an alternative to Final Fight at the time and played on the fact that it had a 2-player option. 64th Street predates Rival Turf by a year or so and was released at a time when the scrolling beat-em-up world was lit up by the likes of Turtles in Time, The Simpsons and The Punisher. 64th Street feels like it takes a very basic approach to the genre. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, but also doesn't mean you'll be shouting about it for too long. The story is set in 1939, and our 2 detective heroes set out to solve the case of the rich man's kidnapped daughter. That's what the intro says. After piecing together the clues in a newspaper, they take to the streets to solve the crime. You can choose between Rick, the experienced detective who relies more on power, and Alan, who is quicker but less powerful. The controls consist of just a standard attack and jump button, but button combinations and directions can be used to perform a few special attacks. You can grab and throw opponents, and one of the key features is the ability to launch them into the background. This is a nice touch and also occasionally provides a handy health or points pickup. The graphics are fairly dull, but this may have been to capture the look and feel of the era. The characters' designs and animations often feel a bit rigid, and the game as a whole does lack a bit of spark. The soundtrack isn't bad, it just plods along with the action and doesn't do too much to really keep you engaged. I can't be too negative about this one. It isn't amazing, but it plays it safe enough to be enjoyable and is definitely one I return to occasionally. The best Jaleco had to offer in the genre is definitely Peacekeepers on the Super Nintendo, which is a far more advanced game in just about every way. Taiwan-based company IGS released the first Polygame Master arcade board in 1997. The hardware was home to some really impressive arcade games from many of the most popular genres. At a time when the scrolling beat-em-up had lost its mainstream appeal, IGS delivered some compelling examples of the genre, including this one, the Gladiator, which was released in 2003. Ancient China is the setting as our heroes set out on a quest to retrieve the cursed sword. There is a lot of variety on offer, with 6 different warriors to choose from, each with their own combat style. Let's start with the presentation of the game, which is fantastic. The sprites are small, but they fit the setting superbly, and the backgrounds are highly detailed and interesting. Each stage has a choice of route to take with varying levels of difficulty, which enhances the game's replay value. The music is a real high point in the game, and the compositions are the perfect complement to the on-screen action. As far as the gameplay goes, it's solid, but it really does suffer from repetitiveness, and I'm not sure whether it's just the combat in general. Some of the enemies do take a long time to defeat, but that is nothing when compared to the boss fights, which feel like they can go on forever. This is such a shame, because the other IGS scrolling beat-em-ups don't really suffer from this. For all of its incredible presentation, it just falls short of being one of the better examples of the genre. I mentioned there were other IGS scrolling beat-em-ups, and perhaps I'll take a look at some of those in the near future. East Technology are probably best known for trying to destroy the Double Dragon franchise in 1990. They would also go on to do the same to the Operation Wolf series in 1994. But in 1992, they developed Silent Dragon, which was published by Taito. The year is 19XX, and the evil Dr. Bio is looking to unleash his mutant monster DNA substance and take over the city. As usual, a group of talented martial artists take to the streets to put a stop to this evil plan. There are 4 playable characters: Joe, Lee, Katu, and Sonny, each with their own strengths and weaknesses. The character select screen seems like it was put together in a bit of a rush, as the cropping of the characters is questionable. Sonny's face just consists of sunglasses and a nose. There is the usual jump and attack buttons, with a sliding attack and a grapple move. Each character also has a dedicated special attack button. The hit detection does let the gameplay down a bit, as it often feels like you aren't really making any impact. There are some explosives spread out in the game that can be set off using a detonator. This was a nice idea, but it isn't that effective. The visuals are bright and vibrant, and the backgrounds include a selection of gritty streets, caves, and the main villain's hideout. One section even has you fighting in a clothing store. The character design is a bit of a mix. The standard enemies are your typical thugs, but there are some bizarre bosses. One feature that doesn't really jump out at you straight away is the scaling effect on the character sprites. This is quite a nice touch, but it's fairly unnecessary and not that impressive. The music is fine, but none of it is very memorable. There are some decent sound effects, and there is plenty of yelling from enemies when defeated. Silent Dragon has just about enough going for it to make it an enjoyable experience. It's far from being one of the best games in the genre, but I'd recommend it just for its strange story and characters. Tough Turf was released as a collaboration between Sunsoft and Sega in 1989, and suffers from finding itself a little stuck in the not-so-distant past. This was released at a time when the genre was really finding its footing, and would have been overshadowed by the likes of Final Fight and the first Ninja Turtles arcade game. The fact that both characters are basic colour swaps and there is only a limited set of moves makes this a mediocre title at best on the surface. It's weird, because there is just something about it that draws me in each time. It could just be the aesthetic, as there is really nothing else out there that steals so much so closely from Double Dragon. It's like the Lee brothers closed the martial arts dojo and started new office jobs. There is a heavy focus on weapons. I say this because without a weapon, you are going to suffer very quickly. The enemies are relentless and will deplete your life bar in no time at all. One of the things I really love about this game is the soundtrack. The compositions are absolutely brilliant throughout the game, and it really gives the action a much needed boost. Another nice feature is the way each gang of enemies yells at you as they enter the screen. This is absolutely ridiculous, but it just adds character to what can often feel like a bland encounter. Overall, Tough Turf definitely has its issues, and the fact it doesn't receive a lot of praise is understandable. Most people I've talked to about it generally write the game off, but I just can't do it. Pass me a bat or a metal pole and I'm more than happy to smash things up when the 9 to 5 is over. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below and subscribe to the channel for more retro gaming content.